Good afternoon, everyone. Will Dupree here in the KXAN live studio. We're about to bring you a virtual town hall that is related to the COVID-19 response here in Austin and Travis County. And as you can see right here on your screen, there are 6 city and county leaders that are about to be a part of this town hall that the Austin Justice Coalition is hosting. If you take a look right here, these are the 6 people that are going to be joining them. Austin Mayor Steve Adler, Austin City Councilmember Natasha Harper-Madison, Austin Police Chief Brian Manley, Austin Assistant City Manager Chris Shorter, Travis County District Attorney Margaret Moore, and Travis County Sheriff Sally Hernandez. As you can see, their virtual town hall, everyone's set up at the moment, and they're giving some introductions right here, again, hosted by the Austin Justice Coalition. So let's take a listen as this gets... Oh, it appears they're having some technical issues. I'm listening to it in my ear at the moment, so we'll just wait for this 1 second. They're having some technical issues before they get started with this, so we'll bring that here in just a moment. Before that happens, though, I want to repeat where the cases for coronavirus stand here in Texas. At the moment, there are more than 4,100 positive COVID-19 cases in Texas. At this point, we have collected information that shows 67 deaths across the state. And right now, more than 47,000 people, almost 48,000 people, have now been tested for COVID-19 in Texas. I'm listening again into my ear where this town hall is getting started. It sounds like things have been addressed with the audio issues on their end, so let's take a listen as this gets underway. Once again, this is the Austin Justice Coalition holding a virtual town hall with 6 city and county leaders about COVID-19.
Jazz, thanks a lot for pulling this together. These are absolutely surreal times, and I can't imagine that anybody would have thought even 4 weeks ago that we would be where we are right now. There are 2 big crises that are going on in our city. They're happening at the same time. The first one is associated with the virus. If we are not able to get a handle on this and keep the physical interactions down, then we're going to have too many people get it too fast, and the hospital system is going to get overloaded, and people will die. The modeling that we have shows that we could have 4,000 to 6,000 people die in our city by mid-August if we're not able to flatten out this curve. We do that by physically separating, by staying home, unless our jobs are critical or essential, unless we're needing to go to the grocery store. It's okay to go outside and walk around, or best to do it alone or with the people that you live with. We really need to get the physical interactions down. What happens to us, whether our hospital system is overrun with 20,000 beds, which in one scenario it could be, whether we're lacking that many beds, all depends on how successful we are on physical interactions. That's one crisis. The second crisis that we have is the economic crisis. With this, beginning with cancellation of South by, we just had too many people now that have lost their jobs, or their small businesses have had to close their doors. We have people wondering where the money is for the next rent check, how they're going to be able to buy groceries or medicines. We're trying to address that the same way we're trying to address the health issues. The city and the county are looking at trying to get as much money and resources directed as quickly as we can. The federal government has earmarked great sums of money that will eventually get to us. We have made it so that no one can get evicted, that their electric and water utilities will not be turned off for an inability to be able to pay. But we're focusing now on both of those crises. That doesn't make it better. We're just trying to do the best we can, and we're finding that in almost every situation we're being presented with choices, and we don't like either of the choices. But we have to pick the best choice that we have. We have a resilient community, and I really do believe that we're going to be able to do what it takes to keep this peak down. I'm watching what's happening in New York right now. We can avoid that here if we're careful and we're strong. And I think we can and should be. But know that there are many people in this community, including many of the folks that are going to be speaking here after I'm done, that are just doing a phenomenal job. Our first responders, police, fire, EMS, are out literally risking their lives, putting their families at risk in order to help keep the rest of us safe. Same with the healthcare workers and the physicians. You know, if you want to know what you can do to help them, because there is something you can do to help with them, stay home. The more we can increase the physical separation, the more we can keep this virus from getting out of hand, that's the best gift you could give to these people. They are people, they have families too. They are concerned about them as you're concerned about your own. But thank you to them. The economic first responders, the people that are out stocking the shelves in the grocery store. You know, we have those and the people that are helping to make this city run right now are economic first responders, and they deserve our thanks. The least we can do is everything we can do to help protect them by doing the physical separation. We were doing pretty good on this, and we need to double those efforts compared to other cities. But you know, a hot spot can overtake a lot of the good work. We had some people that went away on spring break, just came back. We added 38 people to our list of confirmed people yesterday. The number today that we add is going to be about the same. About 50 of those people are going to be people that over the last couple of days that came back from that spring break trip. It only takes one moment like that, one place, one person that has an infection, and this thing can spread. Which is why, again, and I'll conclude with this, people should be staying at home unless there's a reason why you can't. If you go out, make sure you maintain that 6 foot of separation to go to the grocery store, to go out and walk around. It is hard being at home. You know, if you know some people that are alone by themselves, contact them. Don't text them. Pick up the phone and call and talk to them. And say hi. Get together virtually like we're doing here with your friends. Now's the time we need to take care of each other, recognizing that this time in our homes like this is hard for everybody. But if we do this right, we can save thousands of lives. And that's what the focus is now.
Well,
Chad, you want to answer questions?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I want to remind people that if you look down, if you're on your phone and or computer, you should see something that can allow you to send us questions that we can hopefully get through as many before we get off the phone. So we have a little bit more time with the mayor. I'm going to run through some of these questions that we came up with and that we got through email. So questions for the mayor. We have the benefit of being a few weeks ahead and to see the potential catastrophe headed our way. What are you doing now to reduce our risk in the future?
Well, it's not just me, but it's a whole team of people. The Emergency Operation Command is meeting daily. All the healthcare systems meeting daily, in addition to all the task forces that are meeting. You know, we started this preparation years and years ago when we set up that emergency response system in the city and in the county. We're not inventing everything new. We have a playbook. It was thought through in quiet times, and now we're executing. We're executing those plans. Of course, every situation is unique, and everybody's working really hard on the uniqueness of this one. The first really big thing we did to reduce risk was we canceled South by. I mean, it's hard to imagine and remember that was just, 2-3 weeks ago. It feels like it was a lifetime ago now. And it seemed like an outlier when we did it, but it wasn't. If you look and see what's happening right now in Florida, next to some of those beaches during spring break, or in New Orleans right now after Mardi Gras, that was the right decision for our community to make. And that was one of the most significant things we did to lower risk. Right now, we started putting in orders, both the county judge and I, to limit the amount of physical actions. When we said no gatherings, we were, I think, one of the first municipalities to go down to say no social gatherings at all, and no gathering greater than 10. So we've been on the pushing the envelope more than most communities. The last order that we did was, again, stronger than any city in Texas had done. I was happy to see the governor came out with an order yesterday. It was good to see that it was a statewide order. I'm concerned in that while he expressed a preference for church services to be done remotely or at home, he opened up the possibility that could happen in houses of worship. But boy, I tell you, I sure would urge and plead with faith leaders in our community not to do that. Some of them have been just incredibly creative in getting services out to people. The diocese and the Bishop Vasquez and G.V. Clark and the folks at Mount Zion, Rabbi Blumoff. Faith is with us. But it'll appear to us differently, and this is a good time for us to be doing that remotely. So we're taking steps as strong as we can to try and keep people to do this physical separation, but ultimately we can't enforce that. There are just too many people, too many places. It's going to happen only if, as a community, it is important enough to us to want to save lives. There are a lot of people in our community right now that are gathering in places. I drive over town, I see the pickup basketball games going on. That shouldn't be happening now. People at the spillway at Barton Springs shouldn't be happening right now. We really do need to focus on this. That's the most important thing we could help with risk. And then beyond that, while we hope to flatten the curve and work within our existing health capabilities, we are planning for surges that go beyond that, working with some of the most susceptible populations first in our nursing home and those experiencing homelessness, but for everybody in this community, to try to protect the first responders who are out and healthcare workers are out having to deal in the front trenches with this, special accommodations. That's where most of the tests right now are being focused, because ultimately that reduces the risk for the whole city.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We first of all, also thank everybody for all these questions. We are going to try our best to get through as many of these as possible. I do want to ask.
And Chaz, I'll try to give shorter answers. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I thank you. So you and I have about 10 or 15 more minutes. So
okay.
A lot of questions are coming up about people that are experiencing homelessness. And I think this question from Nicholas Thompson kind of puts it all together very nicely. He says, so I know that the city of Austin released a plan last Friday on how to protect people experiencing homelessness. Can the mayor speak on that and how that relates to shelter in place for those without shelter?
Well, you have coming up with me later on this town hall meeting, the assistant city manager, Chris Shorter, I think is doing just a phenomenal job of being the team lead on this issue. He'll be able to speak in greater details, but at a really high level. He has acquired and put into place right now a place for people to go to be able to quarantine or to find isolation if they don't have a home. He has a hotel that has about almost 300 rooms in it. It's available for healthcare workers and first responders, for travelers that need a place to quarantine, but also significantly for people experiencing homelessness. When we find someone with a positive test, we can remove them from the general population, from the group that they were in. We can take the people that they were immediately with and isolate them as well to see if they happen to have caught the virus. I know that the city is pursuing additional hotels so as to increase that capacity, probably some that are just dedicated to those experiencing homelessness if we need it. Shelters are screening clients at intake. To be able to alert us to situations. They're piloting a program right now that's looking pretty good for emergency meal distribution for people that are experiencing homelessness or dealing with food insecurity issues. The Parks Department has opened up 5 controlled shower access areas. The Other Ones Foundation has a mobile hygiene clinic at 6 locations around the city. 2 libraries have opened up with bathroom access. We have 2 public toilets that are available downtown. This is a focus, not only because those folks are most susceptible, but because in times like this is really about those of us that are, it's everybody taking care of everybody else.
Thank you for that. Another question that has come up, what role do you and other city personnel play in ensuring our community is building an adequate supply of tests, PPE, and other essential medical supplies?
Well, you know, there is another task force that is in charge of procurement. They're also bringing in some other folks from outside government to help with logistics. There have been a lot of folks in our community that are helping to source supplies. But we have a task force that is focused on nothing but trying to get us the greatest quantity of the personal protective equipment, the masks and the gowns that are needed by the health workers, all the way through making sure that we have ventilator supply. They're taking a look at taking equipment that isn't being used primarily for ventilation, ventilators, CPAP equipment, helping people with sleep apnea and anesthesiology machines. So we're looking at everything. But again, I'll say that we have all the supply we need. If as a community we can push down this peak, we have it right now. If we can push it down, but that means that people have to be religious about not going out and gathering unless it's critical and it's essential. To the extent that we don't do that, or the disease comes in and begins to really drive up that peak, that's what we're planning for right now, and planning for it at different levels, so that we make sure that we can keep everybody as safe as possible.
Thank you. Another good question. Over 100 doctors signed a letter asking for better communication from the city, designating 3 hospitals for COVID-19 patients and converting the convention center to an isolation area for folks not sick enough for hospitalization. People would just want to know how you respond to that.
Well, it's really important that we communicate well, and probably as if everybody's diving in the immediate moment when a crisis hits, probably we're not doing the communication part as well as we should, because everybody was focused on keeping people as safe as possible in that moment. But it's really important that we do a lot better. I really appreciate you organizing this town hall meeting. I just did one on one of the TV stations, and every evening I can, I'm trying to go on for a few minutes just to raise some of the things that I saw and I'm thinking about, and I'm posting that on my Facebook page. But with respect to doctors, there have been a lot of communication with a lot of doctors, thousands of them in our city, but not with all of them, and not as well with the doctors that are not aligned with the healthcare system, as we're not doing as good a job with the doctors that are not aligned with the 3 health institutions in our city. We'll do better. We have just embedded into the Emergency Operation Command a physician with the area society, so that he's there and can report in real time everything that's happening, as many different ways as he can to do that. But we will continue to try and do better and better with communications, better and better with the dashboard. I urge everybody to go to austintexas.gov/COVID-19. There's a dashboard there, great information on that website.
Thank you. And I think it's important for us as an anti-racist organization, a social justice organization, to ask this question. What is your reaction to the recent reports of racism against the Asian community as well as to the Black community? Because we've seen, due to the president's ongoing remarks that this is the China virus, that even in Austin, people have been discriminating against Asian food markets and Asian businesses. So we just want to know your thoughts on that.
It's absolutely horrific. Those incidents that have been described, and it is not Austin, and we need to talk about it and elevate it because it's so patently wrong. I will tell you that the language used by the president in the naming of this virus, when we had there was another pandemic that got started here in the United States, mad cow, and we didn't refer to that by a United States city. It's just the wrong thing to do because of the stigma associated with that. It was disappointing to see that happens. The folks in our Chinese American community and in our Asian American community in this city, some of the communities that have stepped forward the quickest and organized in order to try to bring support and relief to the effort in our city, raising funds, sourcing supply houses for equipment for the city. So to see anybody in our community, unfortunately, these have been, I hope, just really isolated incidents of people that are just incredibly wrong-headed and dangerous. That's not what our community is about. And we have to call that out anywhere and everywhere that we might see that.
Agree. So we have about 3-4 minutes left, and I'll end the portion of this Q&A with the mayor with these two questions. A lot of people just want to know, and I really think this will probably seep over to Police Chief Manley in a few, but a lot of people want to know, how do we ensure that the stay-at-home order is actually effective? How do we make sure it's being taken seriously? How do we make sure it's being actually mandated in as much as it can? And then a really good question, something that's come up to me a lot over the last couple of days, is what kind, if any, economic relief can city leaders provide to small business owners who are being impacted by the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, as to the first question, I'll repeat what I said a second ago because I think it's really true. We cannot enforce our way to success here. There are too many people, too many places in the city. It would be an impossible thing to actually police or enforce unless people do it. I mean, obviously the orders that we have the force of law, and we can find people and we can put them into jail. And our public officials are out reminding people if they're in a group that they shouldn't be doing that. But boy, that group shouldn't be there to start off with. It's us talking to our neighbors, and it's talking to our friends. It's creating the social and cultural and community expectation among ourselves that if somebody's not doing this, if they're not taking this seriously, that they are putting all of us in danger. They're putting people's grandparents in danger. They're putting, and this has to be important enough to us individually so that collectively we accomplish what it is we want to accomplish. We have all the enforcement arms. It's going to be enforced, but that will not determine whether we're successful or not. We've got to want this, and we've got to want this badly enough, and it's got to be something that we talk to each other about so that we normalize that. Especially when people are starting to get tired here being inside too much and they want to bust out. I understand that. Now is when we need to hold each other responsible and in check. And then the last question you asked, Chaz, was what? There was
if anything on the local level as far as economic relief, what can be people just want to know what can be done.
Well, Dupree, here in the KXAN Live studio, once again, you are listening in to the video conference call that the Austin Justice Coalition is doing right now with 6 different leaders here in Austin and Travis County. The video portion is down for just a moment. You can still hear the audio. We're going to work on that to get it back up here in just a few seconds. It appears our assignment editor is working on that right here at the moment. So please bear with us as we bring you back once again that video conference call that the different leaders are doing with the Austin Justice Coalition about the city's COVID-19 response. We thank you all again for bearing with us as we work to resolve this issue and get that video back to you live here in just a moment. I'm listening into it as the audio is coming in, but the video is not back just yet, so bear with us for a few more seconds. We are hearing from the Austin Mayor, Steve Adler. He's taking some questions from members of the Austin Justice Coalition that they had fielded from some of its supporters as well as the group itself. Coming up here in just a minute, though, questions will be asked of Austin City Council member Natasha Harper Madison, Chief Brian Manley with the Austin Police Department, District Attorney Margaret Moore, Sheriff Sally Hernandez, and the Austin Assistant City Manager Chris Shorter. I'm checking over here at my monitor to make sure the video is coming back. It has not just yet, but we still hear the audio right now with this Zoom call. So I might open that back up as we work to get the video sourcing back here in just a moment. It appears that Mayor Steve Adler is going to be dipping out of the conference call here in just 1 second as more questions are asked of the officials that are also gathered there waiting on this call. It appears the video is back, so let's take a listen. Once again, this is the Austin Justice Coalition's COVID-19 Town Hall with 6 Austin's Travis County leaders.
Go ahead, floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Taz, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that and for joining us. Folks are just really concerned and really curious, and I think you cleared up a lot of questions that they had. Councilwoman Natasha Harper Madison from District 1, are you there? And are you hearing?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi there.
Yeah, I got off of my mobile device and jumped on the computer, and it's considerably better. So, yeah,
Good.
Thanks, Jazz, for telling me to switch it up.
I'm glad you can join us. I hope you're okay. You look well, so thank you for.
I appreciate it. The kids are going to hide for about 27 minutes, and then and then y'all are going to hear what homeschooling sounds like.
Yes, I know all about that too. So let's get to it. I think folks are curious about, from the policy point of view, what our local policymakers are doing, how you're approaching this this crisis. So just a bit of an update, I think, to start us out would be great.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the mayor touched on a lot of what's immediately relevant, but this is one of those times where us recognizing we haven't always had a district representative system, a 10-1 system. This is one of those times where we are able to say, yes, we have to address these issues as a body and as a collective effort. But this is really one of those times where the glaring opportunity for us to specifically put some focus on our districts. I've got 80,000 people that stretch over 46 square miles. And the school districts that affect District 1 are Pflugerville, Manor, Del Valley, and Austin ISD. And we have a lot to take into consideration. We have, very wealthy people, people that are, existing in the margins, and then everybody in between. So we've had a lot of pretty long days. My team and I, we're doing our best. We're showing up every day and doing our absolute best. But the need keeps arising. Chaz pointed it out, and I think one of the previous folks who had a question about how are we addressing the needs of small business owners. And we're talking about every possible industry, some of those that folks don't even think about, that are being directly affected right now. We're talking about homeowners, we're talking about renters, we're talking about elderly people, young people, and all the folks in between. So there's a lot going on. There are a lot of moving parts. One of the things that my team and I have been trying to make a concerted effort towards is getting some collective effort around maximizing efficacy by way of not having too many different initiatives that are happening concurrently where the folks aren't talking to one another. So the mayor sort of pointed it out already. You know, we are recognizing there are some gaps in communication. One of the things that we could all collectively do is say, if you know somebody working on a thing, hand it to. And I think as a municipal body, we're really just trying to figure out like who is that point of contact for food, economic services. One of the things that we're really bumping up into that's proved to be problematic for us, and we still are trying to find a solution. So if there's anybody on the call that has any ideas, anybody on the call who is already engaged in an initiative, so diapers, menstrual products, and incontinence products. People need those things. And one of the things that got brought to my attention today is people who wear dentures, their denture adhesive, and the special toothpaste that they need for their dentures. So we're starting to compile this running list of what do people need and what are they short on, and who do we need to make the community quarterback, who's the primary person. Because I think in so many ways, there are a lot of well-meaning folks, but just too many initiatives. And we definitely have to recognize that the city's got a finite budget. And then from the federal perspective, when that money starts to come down, those dollars will be finite. What we don't want to have happen is have multiple initiatives that are working towards the same goal, fight over the same buckets of money. So we have to tighten up right now. And that's something that we're facing. Something that we're also facing is, it's a difficult subject to discuss, but the truth of the matter is domestic partner violence cases are dramatically increasing. People who were already in situations where molestation, pedophilia was a part of their reality, those situations are increasing. So my team and I are putting together a list of relevant resources that include everything from Airbnb locations, hotel rooms, private rooms that people are offering up. So this is another one of those opportunities for us to collectively as a community recognize everybody's Airbnb, all of your reservations canceled from March to June. So if you have a space that's just sitting open and it's more appropriate to have a mom and her 4 babies go to your 3-bedroom, 2-bath house than a hotel room, then please offer up the resources. My office, the city manager's office, Rodney Gonzalez and I have been in communication about like just putting together, compiling a list of resources for places where people can go. Just anecdotally from my personal experience, my husband moved out a few days ago. If for no other reason, we're recognizing that as a firefighter, he is coming into direct contact with COVID-19. I'm immunocompromised. And so between me and the kids, it's not safe for him to come back to this house after being exposed by way of his work. So there are first responders who are needing places to go. I mean, we happen to have a place for him to go, but that's a point of privilege. And we recognize that wholeheartedly. There are families that don't have that option. So I think one of the things that collectively we could be doing is compiling like an asset map of sorts, like places where people can go, resources for folks by way of hygiene, sanitation, etc. And we're talking about people experiencing homelessness and beyond. That's very important as well. I don't know that there's anybody on the line that represents Austin Independent School District, but just making some observations about what's transpired thus far. And, you know, the announcement around the kids going back to school on May 4th. Well, you're a parent, Suki. You know that the span of time between May 4th and May 23rd, when they would get out, these kids are probably not going back to school this year, in which case the digital divide is a major issue. And so we really need to be talking about, one, how do we make sure to like expand access to broadband, and 2, make sure all these kids have access. Our scholars need access to devices. Their parents need access to devices. Somebody sent me a list yesterday, which was really great. It's a comprehensive list of work from home opportunities, but it turns out you can't do it if you don't have a computer, if you don't have access to Wi-Fi. So, I mean, there are just some major questions and concerns that the constituents in District 1 have. And I've been trying to make a concerted effort to just be as honest and forthright as possible. Where I have an answer, I'll answer it. Where I don't, I promise you, I'll do my digging and find the information. And where we're honestly just going to have to do this together, much like the mayor said, you know, we all have to find it as important as one another does. And so everything is moving really quickly. It's all extraordinarily fluid. There's a lot going on. Nothing is rigid, and we all need one another. So I'll sort of leave it there for now, but just so everybody on the call knows, we're working 19-hour days. I mean, we are putting in the time and the effort and recognizing what the needs and the concerns are, and absolutely doing our best. We're all recognizing that this is an unprecedented time. Like, nobody on this call has ever experienced anything even remotely similar to this in their lifetime. And if we're lucky, you won't again. And so history will be kind to us by recognizing what it is that we did collectively as a community to take care of each other during this unprecedented challenge.
Yes, thank you for all of that. So, you know, questions have been submitted, and I think it'd be important to try to address some of those, but I do appreciate your efforts in streamlining processes. It brings to mind all the things that we're doing now that could have been done in the past. Maybe we just didn't have the time. We're all at home now, but hopefully things that will stick in the future. There's no reason to really go back, right? So you mentioned you put out a call to, you know, folks with real estate, Airbnbs. If people want to provide information, is it best for them to email you? How can they contact you? Also, in terms of contacting you, the list that you're compiling for people who are experiencing domestic violence, where might they find that and when?
I think contacting my office directly is the best bet. If for no other reason, even if we aren't the direct point of contact, being able to forward that information to who is the direct point of contact. I think in a lot of ways, like I said, everything's fluid right now. So in a lot of ways, we just don't have systems in place that are like a singular point of contact. So sorry, Elizabeth, I'm opening up my office. Like, let us be your initial point of contact, and we will reroute your concern, whatever it is. If it's about food insecurity, housing instability, hygiene items, whatever it is, if you have a question or a concern, definitely send it to, if I'm your council person, send it to me. If you have another council person, send it to them, and then they can send it to the appropriate point of contact. Because I think otherwise, like you said, like being more efficient with our systems, there's just too many points of contact. And so instead of offering a person a 17-page long list of resources, just make the direct contact with your council office and then let us direct it to a singular point of contact who will subsequently help you out. But any questions, any concerns as it pertains to anything, if you're in D1, hit us up. If you're in D2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, hit up your council person. I think this is really an ideal opportunity for us to all recognize that we're so fortunate that you have a council person whose job it is to protect you and your interests and your needs and concerns. Definitely contact your council people.
Thank you. Yeah. Our friend Kelly Coleman asks, what are your thoughts on cash assistance to families?
That's complex.
Yeah.
I'm going to say anecdotally, the fact that pawn shops are open right now, from a legislative perspective, pawn shops are considered an essential business because they're considered a financial institution. That scares me. And my team and I are working on what are our options there and how do we remind people during this very difficult time how to protect themselves, you know. But when you're in need, I mean, you go to where you think you're going to be able to provide for your family. So I have some deep concerns about carte blanche, extending cash financial assistance. If for no other reason, there are so many people that we deal with from the financial literacy perspective who are really going to struggle regardless of how much you hand them in cash. And so, you know, without this sort of air of condescension, with the recognition of the fact that, you know, there's a certain degree of paternalism that comes with, you know, there being a caveat to handing a person cash, and people have immediate needs. So I will say I'm still working through where I am and where my office is in terms of how we're going to move forward on that, because it's complicated for me, very, very complicated. I have just in the last 4 days some stories anecdotally that validate every concern I have about just handing people cash. I think where we would be better is to figure out systemically, how do we make certain that broadband is available to every member of our community? How do we make certain that there's no food insecurity? How do we make certain that people are recognizing that this will likely be the great equalizer of our time and an opportunity for everybody to sort of pivot and shift and figure out what does it look like next, you know, as opposed to sort of waiting around indefinitely for what happens next. Like you take, you know, that control, that power, and figure out what your next steps look like. I think we're all doing that to some degree. So I appreciate the question, Kelly, but the truth of the matter is I'm torn as to what I believe the appropriate resolution is. It's tricky.
Thank you for being candid about that.
Sure.
And thank you for being here. I think we need to move on to Chief Manley.
Okay.
And I just want to thank you for your time and for being really forthright about what's happening for your office and your district. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Chief Manley, you are there?
He's muted. Oh, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, we can hear you. So I think folks would want to hear from you. Just first of all, just an update and what's happening at APD, how your officers are staying safe health-wise and keeping their distance, and you know, if they're at all sick, and you know, what general information you'd like to share with us about safety in our community.
Sure. I'll start with kind of a status of the department. As has been reported to this point, unfortunately, we do have 2 positive cases for COVID-19 at the Austin Police Department right now, one being a police officer and one being one of our civilian employees. So we're monitoring them, and they're getting the care that they need, and we're obviously very hopeful that they will make a complete and quick recovery. We're taking steps, just like we're asking the community to socially isolate and have that safe distance to the extent possible. We're asking the same of our officers. But when you're on the front line, along with our brothers and sisters in fire and EMS and the medical workers, that's not always going to be possible. I think we've taken steps to minimize unnecessary contacts given the circumstances we're in right now. We have amended response protocols, calls that in the past we would have had an in-person response to, that now we're asking the community to use our technology, our online reporting sources, so that we can both keep the community and our department safe by minimizing those interactions. We have a process in place where employees who believe they have been exposed to COVID-19 have resources to get tested if appropriate. And then we have a process in place for employees, whether on duty or off duty, who begin to exhibit symptoms of either COVID-19 or a flu-like illness, can report that, and we can ensure that they get tested so that if they are in fact sick, that we can make sure that we address them as well as others in the department that may have been around them. Many may know that when a police officer starts their shift, we go to what's called an initial briefing, where we bring that shift in. They sit down with their supervisor. They go over the day's events. They go over priority areas. And this has proven in other police departments, as we're seeing, to be an area where we can see the virus spread. So we're moving that into an online format as well, to when officers show up for duty, they'll get straight in their vehicles and supervisors will either.
Will Dupree, once again in the KXAN live studio. We are, because this is a internet-based conference, sometimes the video source goes down after a certain amount of time because of inactive use. So our assignment editor is running upstairs to this computer where we're streaming this particular video conference. There's still audio coming through, but the video should be back here in just a few moments. We're listening right now to Chief Brian Manley with the Austin Police Department. He was talking about 2 positive cases being confirmed with employees at the police department, 1 police officer and 1 civilian employee. He was discussing some of the measures that are being taken not only to protect the community, but also employees at the police department, because that's important so that that interaction is always happening. It's very important that it continues, but there may be some changes that need to take place, and he was addressing that, particularly talking about reporting sources being made available online so that there is not that person-to-person contact. They're trying to practice what they preach and institute that change. It's something that a lot of people are doing. We're doing that here at KXAN. But once again, we're about to get that video source back up here in just 1 second so that we can hear the rest of the conversation. So far, we've heard from Mayor Steve Adler, City Council Member Natasha Harper-Madison, and we are listening into questions at the moment involving Chief Brian Manley with the Austin Police Department. Still to come, our District Attorney, Margaret Moore, Sheriff Sally Hernandez with Travis County, and Austin Assistant City Manager Chris Shorter. We have the video source back up now, so let's take a listen in once again to the Austin Justice Coalition's COVID-19 Town Hall with Austin Travis County leaders.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to start by reiterating what the mayor said at the beginning. This is not an issue we're going to enforce our way out of, citations, arrests, whatever. This is only going to be solved by voluntary compliance. We need people to cooperate with the orders that have been put out by the mayor on the advice of those in the medical field that know best. And we know that social distancing, that quarantine, that isolation works. We just need the community to cooperate. So we are getting calls from members in the community that are observing violations of the orders that are in place. And our focus is on education, on making sure, again, that the community members understand, number one, the orders, and that the conduct that they are engaging in is in violation of those orders, and the need for them to not do that for really the safety and health of everyone involved. The goal is not to go out and issue citations and make arrests, because again, that's tying up the officers for longer than necessary. It's creating a lot more unnecessary contact where the virus can be spread either into the community or from the community back into the department. And so our efforts are focused on educating and making sure everyone is compliant in that manner.
All right, and the mayor did talk a bit about homeless and shelters that are being put in place. How are y'all handling homeless interactions with people who are experiencing homelessness? Is there a moratorium on raids, that type of thing? Can you lead us through that?
Sure. And the reality is we don't do raids on homeless per se. We do cleanups, whether it be in conjunction with either state officials or our local city partners. Right now, those for the most part are on hold because we're waiting to get all of the appropriate PPE that's necessary for the folks that are going in and conducting those types of cleanups. We do recognize that our homeless community here in Austin is probably one of the most at-risk groups outside of those that are at risk just because of age or medical condition, given either their access to medical treatment or just how hard life is on the streets. So we do still have our host officers that are out there. And with the regular patrol officers, if there are calls for service, then again, the approach is through that education prior to the approach being through the enforcement. And I know in conversations that I've had with the sheriff that we are seeing the numbers of people in our community that are being jailed for the low-level offenses decrease. And I think that's a result of everybody kind of understanding the importance of the social isolation, as well as the dangers that really exist in confined communities like a jail.
And we've heard some folks have been talking about getting stopped seemingly randomly. Can you address that?
Sure. I do know that the first day the orders went into effect, there were a few instances across the region, really. It wasn't just here in Austin. I know of agencies outside of the immediate Austin area as well, where officers who were very focused on doing the right thing, trying to enforce an order that they knew was geared towards public safety, in the middle of a pandemic, were asking people where they were going and if they had proof that they were going to a location, a business that was an allowable place to go under the rules. We've now had the opportunity to put out specific direction to our officers. I know I've had conversations with the sheriff and others to where we're educating the officers on what the expectation is. And that is, number one, you're not going to stop someone for the sole purpose of determining whether or not they are in compliance with the orders that we have in place on staying home, staying safe. And then secondly, if you stopped somebody for another reason, whether it be a hazardous traffic violation or suspicious activity related to criminal activity, it's okay to educate them as far as what the orders state as with the importance of the social distancing and making sure that you are engaging in one of those allowable activities, but we're not going to be asking people to prove that. So there's no need for companies to issue letters to their essential employees so that they have that with them or to carry any specific kind of ID. Again, this is one where it looks like we've got, still over 200 people on this call. This is where we need those that are on this call that have influence within your neighborhoods, your neighborhood associations, your work, all of that. We need you to help us influence everyone that you communicate with on the importance of following these important orders that are in place. People always ask, what can we do to help? You can protect those that are out there protecting you every single day, whether that's your public safety officials, whether that's your medical individuals, or as was mentioned earlier, those in the public sector that are working in those essential industries, the groceries and all of that, that allow us to get through this by following the orders, by staying home, by being smart. That's what's going to get us through this with the least amount of loss.
Thank you for that. I think we have time for one or two more questions. So we do know that there are federal dollars that are being poured into local, state, and national and federal law enforcement. Are you planning on going and submitting grants and all that for those funds? And how do you plan on using any funds that you might get?
Sure. If we have the opportunity to put in for grants, federal or state grants, based on what the requirements of those grants are, then we would absolutely seek to do that. I know that some of these grants that we are looking at are specific towards things like PPE, with the equipment that is in such need right now, of whether through federal grants we could get more of that, to have that on hand, both for where we're at today, and again, to show the importance of having a cache of this type of equipment so that if we were to find ourselves in a situation like this again, we had that on hand. So we would definitely look for that. I think a lot of the grants that will come out will probably be more at the disposal of our elected officials and leaders towards helping a community recover economically from this pandemic. And then many of them also will be geared towards the medical community for, again, that vital equipment. But those that are geared towards law enforcement, we would seek to get those so that we can ensure that we have all of the valuable PPE on hand so that we're prepared for however long this lasts.
All right. Well, Chief, thank you for being here today and for answering all of those questions. There are more in the comments. I think there will be a little bit of time at the end of this for Q&A. So if you will stick around for a bit, hopefully we can get to another one or two of those questions. I'm going to toss it back to Chaz, who's going to be speaking with our district attorney, Margaret Moore. Chaz, you can take it from here.
Thank you. Also, I just want to, again, shout out all the people that are still here. We have over 220 people here. Also, shout out to our local news stations, Fox, KXAN, and KVU, are streaming this on their website. So we're kind of like the hot item right now. So going on to District Attorney Margaret Moore, we have a few questions for you when it comes to keeping not only the people that are in the jail, which we'll be talking to Sheriff Hernandez about, but people that are still going to find their ways going through the legal system at this time. We want to make sure that they are safe, that they are taken care of, that we are doing everything to flatten the curve from your perspective. So first, we just want to start off with a few updates from your office, and then we'll get into a few questions.
Well, we've been working hard. The courts have been operating in accordance with an order that came down from the Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals that has given us the latitude to operate remotely. And we, as of this week, are not having any live dockets. Everybody's at the county is pulled together to get the courts, the inmates at the jail, the defense attorneys, everyone in a position to be able to conduct court business remotely. We have sent most of our folks home to work from their homes to minimize their exposure, which leaves a pretty small rotating group of folks to be able to go over and deal with anything that comes up in court. All of the focus of court activity at this time is on people in jail. Anybody out on bond, those cases have been put off until May. Jury trial in some instances won't be taking place until June. So we've been able to make a very substantial reduction in jail population by focusing entirely on jail cases. My offices, my people have been proactively screening cases to see if a person appears to be eligible for a personal bond, and proactively reaching out to the defense representation for that person to see if something can be worked out. The focus at this point is entirely on having in jail only those people who do pose a risk of some sort of violence to the community. We do rely heavily upon our police partners to keep us informed when they're making the arrests. But I can tell you, as far as our bookings are way down. To last day of March, yesterday was down to, I think, 31. Usually it's up at above the hundreds. I was trying to look at numbers while I'm sitting here talking, but if you was 41, excuse me. But if you're talking somewhere in the of above 100, you customarily down to 40 something, then a big shift has taken place, and it's taking place in our courtrooms. We went from about 2,200 people in the jail down to 1,600, a little above 1,600 today. So the court system, they're working hard, and we're really trying to make sure that the sheriff is in a good position to keep the virus out of the jail.
Well, good. Thank you so much. And I know you've been working very hard. So we'll just go with a couple questions.
Sure.
And then we'll hear from our lovely sheriff. So this is a question that we got. It is not a matter of if, but when the coronavirus will enter prisons and jails, according to health experts. The consequences of that eventually could be devastating. COVID-19 outbreaks in prisons and jail will spread, quote unquote, like wildfire due to close quarters, unsanitary conditions, a population that is more vulnerable to COVID-19, and the large number of people that cycle through the criminal justice system. So with that being said, what is your plan as DA to reduce the spread of COVID-19, both within our jails and prisons and the communities where they're located?
What I've been describing it was our plan. We knew from the beginning that we needed to give the sheriff as much room as possible, so that and to minimize the introduction of the possibility of the introduction of the virus into the jail. So a couple of things went into place here very early on. One of them was an order that was entered by both misdemeanor judges and the district judges for felonies to suspend warrants for minor low-level offenses. We had a specific list of nonviolent low-level offenses. So when the police made a stop for some reason, they would not bring that person into the booking area. Hopefully that will also help the police minimize their contacts with folks, because they don't have to arrest them and bring them in. Then on top of that, we have our automatic personal bond orders that are in place. We have had to slightly modify that with the governor's order, but it does still put us in a good position to move people through booking and get out on personal bond when they're charged with the nonviolent type offenses and they're otherwise eligible for the personal bond. Get them out so they're not moved into the general population of the jail. These were very significant moves by the judges. The county attorney and I both had worked really hard to put together the orders that they signed, and it's been a truly collaborative effort to see that folks that don't need to be in jail are not in jail.
All right, thank you so much. So like we literally only have 2 more questions, so this will be quick.
Okay.
A question we have from the audience, quote unquote, will you immediately decline to prosecute low-level offenses that don't jeopardize public safety?
Well, I don't know what they mean by decline to prosecute. As I said, our focus is entirely on violent offenses now, people who pose a risk to violence. Some of them may be charged with something that looks like a low-level offense, but for instance, a person may be arrested for a UUM, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. But if that person has a history of offending and is, as in just recently happened, also in possession of a ski mask and a weapon and does appear to pose a risk, then that person, we might be prosecuting that person. But really the focus right now is on not whether we prosecute or not, but it's whether or not they need to remain incarcerated. So our focus has been on streamlining the examination of jail cases so that we can get folks out of jail that don't need to be in the jail.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue to the next question. And then I'll just ask the last one at the same time so you can answer both. So this question is, do you plan to expedite as much as you can getting more pre-trial defendants released? And then the last question for you before we go to the sheriff is, as you know, and you recently spoke on it a little bit earlier, the governor has issued an order prohibiting release without a bail bond for people with a history of any violent offense. But that does not preclude setting low bail amounts. Would you support recommending low bail amounts if the person doesn't present a current threat of violence?
Well, we do support that. But that's a slight mischaracterization of the governor's order. It addressed personal bonds, and of course, Travis County has a very, very robust personal bond system anyway, and we have, as I've was saying, we've streamlined that with this automatic personal bond for certain low-level offenses. But we do have where the governors seemed to be expressing his concern was the release of violent people who have a history of violent offenses. And we had already we've been focusing on the more violent offenders now ever since the threat of the virus became, well, we activated the Emergency Operations Center on March 2nd. So from that day to now, we've been all very aggressively examining our processes so that we are, as I said, trying to keep folks out of the jail that don't need to be in jail to ensure public safety.
And then the last question, as far as planning to expedite more pre-trial defendants release, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, that's what we have been doing. So all of my intake lawyers and my trial teams, because there's no trials, there's no hearings but bond hearings, all of our focus has been on looking at the folks who are in jail and then if we see someone that the defense lawyer hasn't even contacted us yet, we reach out ourselves and say, hey, looks to us like this person should be eligible for a personal bond. Are you setting it? Are you requesting it? And then we don't oppose when we ourselves have decided that person does not pose a risk. We have had proceedings where we do oppose a defense motion for release on bond, but it's been situations like multiple aggravated robberies, serial sex offender. That's the kind of situation where we, as the state's attorney, step in and say, no, we would oppose that release. But when we see a person that should be released, we are proactively reaching out and saying, hey, we need to get this person out of jail.
Well, thank you so much, District Attorney Margaret Moore. Glad you could join us. And we also hope you can stick around to answer some Q&A at the end.
Sure.
But now we're going to go to, last but not least, before we get to Chris Shorter, Sheriff Sally Hernandez, which, to us, we thought it was so important for you to be on this phone call because right when the pandemic started, the population that people was most concerned about was those that are incarcerated. So I would just want to give you a few minutes to give updates about some of the really good things you've been doing at the jail, and then we'll get into some questions.
Thank you, Chaz, and thank you for this opportunity because I cannot express to you how proud I am of the men and women that work at the Travis County Sheriff's Office. For the last 12 years, we've not been preparing for this just in the last few months. For the last 12 years, the men and women at the Travis County Sheriff's Office and Corrections, they have an annual inspection every year, and that's their report card, where the Texas Commission on Jail Standard comes in and reviews everything that we do, inspects our jail, and for the last 12 years, we've been passing and doing a great job at the jail. So when this rolled around, what they've done is their training and their experience has kicked in. And I think one of the greatest things that we have been doing is the communication that we have put in place. We started communicating about COVID-19 late January, early February. We have a briefing, and not only do we brief everybody in our office, we also brief the surrounding law enforcement. We keep them in contact and updated with things that are coming out of the Emergency Operations Center. But, and I know there's a lot of concerns, like what are some of the procedures that we have in place? But I want to go over some of the numbers real quick. Margaret touched on some of these, but in February, the beginning of February through March 14th, the average daily booking was 107 people a day. Now, after the March 15th through March 31st, our average is 60. And what does that mean for our jail population? In March 13th of 2020, there was 2,213 people in our jail. And today we have 1,649 people. That is partnership in pure form. That is the people in law enforcement working alongside the prosecutors and the judges doing what we know to do. On March the 14th, I reached out to all of the local law enforcement, and I sent a letter saying, help us. Only arrest those that you just absolutely have to. You have to do it by statute. There's no other means. And everybody responded very positively. And that is why those bookings keep going down. And I'm very happy about that. We have procedures in place. I know you're hearing all kinds of things about Riker and the jails in New York, but we have, when somebody walks in the jail, we have a screening process that they go from being asked questions, and if they don't answer the questions, they get automatically put in quarantine. We're not going to take any risks, right? And then if they show any kind of symptoms, we're going to put them into quarantine. If they don't bond out, and if they stay there, and we're going to have to keep them, and they're going to go on transferred into Del Valley. Well, then when they go to Del Valley, they're put into another 10 to 15 day quarantine before they're put into general population. Some of the things that right off the bat we did was we had to stop visitation. We had to stop programs. We had to stop things from people coming into our facility. So to do that, we knew that we needed to reach out to the people that do our video visitation, and we asked them to reduce the fee for that video visitation, and they did. We upped an already clean facility, but we upped our game on keeping the facility clean and sanitized. I know there's a lot of talk about they don't have soap and hand sanitizer. That's not true. They do. We have it posted, all the procedures on how to stop this virus, about washing your hands and keeping your hands away from your face and all of that. It's posted in both English and Spanish. We're doing everything that we know to do. I mean, it's game's on, and the men and women at the Travis County Sheriff's Office, that's exactly what they're doing. Game is on, and they're working really, really hard for the people that are in our care and our custody.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I think it's just really important for people to know the answer to this first question. How many people are incarcerated locally as of today?
I gave you, it's 1,649 people.
And I think it's really good for people to understand the number before, all right? Like that's a pretty significant drop of the amount of people that we've been able to get out of jail that are not, a risk to the community. So if you want to talk about that for a second, we can, but if not, I can just move on.
Well, I think, Chaz, that a number of us have already did that. I mean, at the virtual courts everybody is hands on deck trying to make virtual courts work. When you talk about how many district courts we have, how many county court at law courts we have, and don't forget the mental health docket. I mean, all of these judges are operating. The magistrate court, that's all done through virtual courtrooms. And that's everybody working together. County ITS, our ITS, the DA's office, their ITS. I mean, it's really everybody working in partnership, making it where people aren't being moved around.
And just like Suki asked the police chief, we just want to know if you have any staff that have tested positive or shown symptoms of the coronavirus.
Well, today we got notice. We did have one staff member that was in a different country, and she was on a visit. She came back in the country, never came back to work. She self-quarantined, she tested, and it came back positive. And we actually got word today that not only, she's retested and it came back negative. But that had nothing to do, we did have a staff member, but she didn't acquire it in Travis County, nor did she come in contact with the jail or anybody in the sheriff's office.
Okay, and we have about 2 minutes, so I'll just kind of put these last two questions together. It's a statement and a question, then a question. It is essential to figure out who is at heightened risk for people, at heightened risk before people see a judge or have bail set. Are you taking any steps to identify people with heightened health risk to COVID-19? And then how many of the 1,649 people in our county jail are at the greatest health risk? Examples, elderly, immunocompromised, et cetera.
I don't have that number, Chaz. I will tell you that we do have a unit that we have specifically made for people that are 65 and older. We are, again, taking all the precautions. Everybody's taking their temperature before anybody that's coming in and out has to have their temperature taken. We're taking all the precautions. I don't have the breakdown on that. I do know the elderly, and I know well, I don't want to say elderly, but the 65 and above are in a unit of their own.
Okay, thank you. So I do have one more question because a lot of people keep texting me, and I don't want to get beat up if I don't ask it. Do you know, or are you aware of the amount of people that were released without secure housing? And then, just a kind of pie in the sky question, not to be a curveball. Are you willing to work with, advocate groups, community groups, other elected officials and city leaders to kind of keep this new normal of keeping people out of jail that are not public safety risk, to kind of keep the jail numbers where they are today?
Well, first of all, I don't know the number of people that have been released, and it's no secret. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. Put me out of business. We want our community safe, right? And so we're doing everything in law enforcement to keep our community safe. And yes, I'll continue working with the DA, the county attorney, and the judges to do all that we can to keep people out of jail. We don't want anybody in jail. Ask the chief and all of the local law enforcement. I don't want anybody to come to jail. But sometimes we don't always have that option, right? Because we've got to balance public safety along with this business. I mean, that's part of the business.
Well, Sheriff Hernandez, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a lot of things to do. I'm going to ask you to stick around for another couple minutes, 9 to 10 minutes, so we can get to some Q&A. But in closing, I thought it was really important to hear from somebody on the third floor, the people that actually run the city and know the city more intimately than maybe anybody. So that's why we invited Assistant City Manager Chris Shorter. He's just going to give us some closing thoughts and remarks from his perspective as Assistant City Manager, and then we'll get to some Q&A. So Chris, you got the floor.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. So I just really want to start out, Chaz, thanking you and Suki and really the entire Justice Coalition for pulling this together. We need as many of these kinds of forums as possible, especially given that many folks are at home, looking for information, looking for answers, looking for clarity. So it really means a lot that you have taken the time in the effort to pull this many people together in one space. I've been doing a lot of these calls and video conferencing to conduct the business, if you will, of the city. And it just really means a lot that you are pulling the community together in this way. I also really want to acknowledge and thank the mayor and Councilmember Harper Madison for their leadership throughout this entire crisis. It has really meant a lot, and not just Councilmember Harper, but really all of her colleagues, all the council members that we have been fully engaged, and I just really want to acknowledge and thank them. I also want to echo what the sheriff said, and just the real sense of pride that I certainly feel and that others feel in seeing the city, county staff pull together in the way that that we are seeing every day. I also want to just thank folks who maybe are in government, staff who are in government or outside of government, who are leaving their homes every day to support and help our cities and counties most vulnerable. It really speaks wonders in terms of their commitment to this community. And there's so many questions about this virus that are still unanswered. And so for folks to exit their home every day to support our city's most vulnerable is, again, a real sense and source of pride for me. I posted 2 links in the comments section. One, a link to our general COVID-19 response efforts. A lot of great information. I saw the question about sort of where to get good information, and that's a great place. There was also a question about our homeless response. And so I posted a second link that's specific to our homeless response and some of the social safety nets that we've put in place to serve our homeless population. And I'll also say that there's an interactive map. I think someone asked the question about what kinds of services are available. And so services like showers, hand washing stations, restrooms, how we've leveraged our facilities within the city, our libraries and our parks and recreation sites to provide a place for our homeless population to go and get these basic hygiene things done. So again, if you have questions, I would ask you to please do check out those websites. It's good, really good information. I also saw in the comment section a question about whether this was as serious as we are taking it. And I guess what I'll say is that 871 people died in America yesterday. And I'll pause for a second. And today, we're not done with the day yet, 835 people have died. And so as we look at the news, especially local news, and we see folks out at our recreation park, at our parks and at Barking Springs and on our trails, I really just want to, and I know the mayor mentioned this at the opening, really strongly urge that for those who don't understand the implications here and how many people we're losing. And I'll also add to that, that while the age group 20 to 40 aren't those who are most likely hospitalized, they are the most likely affected. So they are carriers. And as young people, we aren't the ones who are getting ill. I shouldn't say we, a little bit, but we are the ones who are carrying. And so I have a grandmother who is in her 80s. I call and I make sure that she's okay. I make sure that food is delivered for her, but I'm not going by. I'm not dropping in. And so we need to be thoughtful and conscious about what this virus can do and what it is doing, and be very, very thoughtful about speaking to our friends and our neighbors about staying home. There was a question asked about what support we're providing to vulnerable families, what support we're providing to businesses. A lot of really good information is on the two, if you follow those 2 links, good information about what we're doing for both. One example in terms of business support is online courses that would have cost a small business 4 weeks ago are now being offered for free. And so if you're a small business and you need help with better understanding back office administrative support, accounting systems, these are all resources that are now online and available to you for free. There's also a lot of work that we're doing around making sure that we're providing resources. And I will say that this is the start, that there's going to be a pretty significant recovery that has to take place, not just for businesses, but for individual people. And so we are certainly, as a city, and I'll speak for the county only because they are a part of our emergency management response and efforts, that we are at this point right now planning and working with our council members and leaders to make sure that when we are out of the crisis response, that we are following up quickly with the crisis that is economic recovery. Hotel rooms were mentioned, and I will say briefly that we are acquiring contracts with hotels. We have already secured one isolation facility that is really set aside specifically for those who are confirmed positive for COVID-19. That is not just our homeless population, but anyone, healthcare providers, our first responders, even our own city and county staff who may be positive or who might be symptomatic and awaiting confirmation via test. So that resource is there, and it's almost a 300-bed facility, and we will maintain that contract throughout this crisis. I'll also say specifically for the homeless population, our most vulnerable, we say often that we want folks to stay home, but for those who don't have a home to go to, we want to make sure that we are providing hotel rooms, not just for homeless who might be confirmed or symptomatic, but for homeless who are high risk. So we are certainly acquiring more hotel contracts. We have one that we announced today, another coming online next week, and we'll continue to move in that direction where there is a need. We're also working really hard on food access and doing a lot of work with third parties, not just government partners, to make sure that we're leveraging restaurants and commercial kitchens to provide for food access, not just for the homeless, but also for vulnerable families. A lot of information and updates, real-time updates about these services are going to be placed on the website on those two links that I included in the comment section. So again, invite you to not just look at them today, but to continue to go back and look at them as we go forward. This is a serious challenge for our community, and for those who are taking advantage of our parks right now, barbecuing on Barking Springs, sort of not practicing social distancing protocols. I really just want to urge you to stay home. This is really life and death. There's no other way to put it. I so appreciate the time and the ability to talk to so many, and am certainly available for questions and a follow-up call if and when you organize it.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. And I know it is 5:01. I'm going to ask you all for maybe just 5 more minutes. I see the mayor got back on the line. We're going to go through maybe a question apiece of these. Suki, I'm going to need you to help me out. But I guess this first question can go to Chief Manley, District Attorney Moore, and Sheriff Hernandez. And I'm just going to summarize a lot of these questions. It's a lot of questions that we're seeing about, and Chief, I want to thank you for going through the questions and answering them. I saw you were typing away. It's a lot of questions about the undocumented community. What plans or protocols, if any, do we have to protect those individuals during this time? And then I guess it'll also go back to the city side. What financial services are available to the undocumented community here in Austin? And I don't know who wants to start with that, but.
Well, Chad, since you directed it at kind of the law enforcement side first, I guess. So there's nothing that's particularly different as far as an enforcement or an education on whether you're documented or undocumented. I think we realize that we have to go the extra mile when we're working with our community that is the undocumented community here because of, sometimes trust issues that exist based on state legislation that breaks down that relationship between certain communities and law enforcement. So we're just really increasing our efforts there to make sure that they recognize we are still an entity they can come to if they're experiencing any type of victimization, but also that they also understand the importance of the messaging and the orders that are in place to protect everyone through the social distancing.
Okay. I'll go. See, Sheriff Hernandez wants to say something.
I was just going to reinforce what Chief Manley said. we're still not concerned about their status. We're concerned about their safety, and even during this COVID-19, we're concerned about their well-being, and for them to know that and get that message out.
Thank you so much. I think this one will probably go to the mayor or Natasha if she's still online. I know she's having some connectivity issues, or maybe even Chris. Patrick Moorhead asked I think a valid question. We're doing rent relief. We're doing relief for a lot of different people, but what about the landlords that are not getting the money that is rightfully owed to them at this time? Is it any relief for landlords or people that are relying on payment of some sort during this time? And that may be a Mayor or Chris question.
I will have to, Chaz, if you don't mind, just because I don't like to sort of misquote what the city is providing. I know for sure evictions have been placed on hold. Not sure what support landlords. And let me be clear that the evictions aren't holding evictions and allowing for renters to not pay or pay some portion of the rent doesn't mean that that rent payment is forgiven. It just means that we are holding for this time period, whether that's 30 days or 60 days, their requirement to pay. So the funding is still owed. What I want to do though is go back, and if Chaz, I could pass through you or Suki information about what we are doing specifically for landlords. There may be some relief package that I'm not aware of, and I don't want to misquote what the city might be doing.
I appreciate that. And what we will do for all the questions that we are definitely not going to be able to get through today, we will compile this list and we will send them to our panelists, and they will either answer them or have somebody within the department that they work in answer them, and we will send this back out.
And I'll also clarify on that question, because I see in the comment section, folks are mentioning electricity, utility, so water, power. There is relief there for sure. And so there's clear information on the website in terms of the ability to hold any disconnection or disconnects related to electricity or water, that those disconnects are not happening and have been put on hold for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. So I have one more question, then Suki, I'm sure, has some, and then we will end the discussion here for today. And I guess this goes to Sheriff Hernandez again, and maybe even the attorney, District Attorney Margaret Moore and Police Chief Manley. While, and I'll personally speak for me, I'm really grateful for the work you all are doing to keep people out of jail and to get people out of jail. But as we know, we have a lot of people that are incarcerated or experiencing incarceration that have mental health issues, that are that don't have secure housing, that don't have secure jobs. Are there any programs in place? Are there any kind of any assistance to help these people? If so, what are they? If not, is there anything that nonprofits and organizations and advocates can do to help get those people connected? Because it is great that they're getting out, but if they're getting out to nothing, I think that's a concern for a lot of people.
I can start it. So like I said, the mental health docket, we have it where they're doing the virtual court. So there are people still working on it. There's people still in the jail that are over our programs that are still working with people with mental illness. Integral care is up and running. They're not out, but they're still working on cases. So people are still actively working with our mental health clients. And so business, it's just slower because it's virtual court, and but all of the things that are in place, that were in place before, are still in place. They're just they're having to be modified because of just the social distancing, and we're just having to do it differently.
I would agree with that. Both the county attorney and the district attorney have a dedicated prosecutor to handle mental health cases. And the goal is always to find something that will engage that person in services to address the reason why they're in jail. And when mental health is seen as the driver, a mental health issue or substance abuse issue. So they're getting, as I said, a full focus of everybody's attention right now as anyone in jail, and particularly someone like that. But we also recognize that just putting them out on the street is not the best thing to do. In many instances, they need to be hooked up with something that will give them assistance. So that's where we rely on the services in the community through integral care. And there was a question, Chaz, that was asked that I think is real important about, well, now that we've got the jail population down this low, doing what we're doing, do we think we can keep that up? And I think the answer is largely yes. Sorry, my computer slipped. We have put into place some things here that were already in the works because we saw it as a better way to handle handle bookings and to handle our personal bond process. So yes, I think a lot of this will endure. I think this ability to do proceedings remotely is going to be something we're going to want to continue because we've had issues for many years, Sheriff, with your folks having to transport folks from Del Valley down to the courthouse, and maybe they walk into a courtroom for 30, 20, 25 minutes and then they have to go back and nothing really happened. I think some of these efficiencies are going to persist, and I think we're going to do we're going to learn from all this, and it's an opportunity for us to do things better.
Thank you so much. Suki, do you have any questions that you want to pile together?
Yes, I do. Just two questions. Dean Moore, I really do appreciate your talking about the changes that have been made and that there are things that can stick. I think that's really important not to snap back to where we were. There's
Sure.
Didn't seem to be a strong need for it. If there wasn't now, I feel like let's just move forward and continue to shrink our jail and prison populations. But in tied to that, Tara Tucker has asked, are you reaching out to the parole board on cases where people can be released like you are doing with jail case?
Honestly, we have not had a contact with the parole board. We've been entirely focused on active cases here.
Okay.
So no, I haven't seen, no, we're not at this time.
Thanks to Tara for that. That's really good food for thought, especially for people who are parole eligible and who might be at risk, at great health risk. So maybe we'll have more on that from you soon.
Yeah, that's not information we would be necessarily, we get informed when someone is eligible for parole, but we don't know what their condition is, right? So we give those cases this, it is our practice to decide whether or not we have an interest in protesting a parole, but it generally is entirely to do with the severity of the offense and the harm that was done by that person and the potential they pose for future harm. So, but we don't know about their health condition necessarily.
Okay, that'd be an interesting data point. Dean Moore, thank you for bringing those questions. The last one is for our mayor. a lot of folks are concerned about our elderly population, and we have two questions specifically from our elders. One person asks, they say, my husband and I are 81 and 75 respectively. We are in Hawaii helping our son and his family homeschool our grandchild. When might we be able to return to Austin? Is it likely that we will have to fly through LAX? And the second person says, I currently live in Austin Overture Mueller 55 plus active adult community. Our average age is 75 years old. We have over 150 residents living here. Recent City of Austin stay home advisories and enforcement focusing on assisted living facilities, nursing homes, memory care, and extended care facilities have ignored the high concentration of the vulnerable elderly at the many active adult communities here in Austin. Question, are there plans for the City of Austin to reach out to the many active adult 55 plus apartment buildings that have been neglected to ensure that management is in compliance with mandated COVID-19 safe practices? So 2 questions, when can folks come home? And what route will they take if it's through LAX? And also, are there plans for the city to reach out to the apartment buildings to be sure that they're in compliance?
I think the mayor is. I think we lost him.
That is fine.
I'll just sort of jump in on the nursing home piece. I'll say that that our Austin Public Health has a division of staff responsible for going out when the bar and restaurant order came out. Were responsible for going out and working with restaurants and bars to make sure they were in compliance. That same group is responsible for, along with code enforcement, responsible for ensuring compliance around nursing homes and other facilities. So let me say to that person who asked that question, if there is a nursing home, an apartment building, a restaurant, bar who is not compliant, or they would like to notify us about, please feel free to call 311. And we do have staff who are working every day to make sure that these kinds of things are enforced. And I will say that from a nursing home perspective, there are a number of other authorities and entities that are also providing regulation over what kind of exit and entrance happens, who can come visit, all of these things. So please do sort of let us know where this is and which nursing home this is, and we could certainly send a team out to help educate.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Chris. Thank y'all so much. We've been well over our time limit. If you all have any last thoughts, this is the time to do so. But you all have said a lot. So if you have nothing else to say, I'm looking around, not seeing any head movement, no thumbs up. All right, great. Thank you for all the people that have joined in. This webinar, it was recorded. We'll be putting it on my Facebook page. We'll send it out in email blast. And we will try our best to work with all these elected officials and city leaders to answer the many questions that we were not able to get to today. And we will be doing as many of these as possible. I think next week, we're going to try to do a town hall about the food security, food insecurity for some instances, situation here in Travis County, to let people know where they can go get food if they need help with food and things of that nature. So once again, thank you all. Thank you, Austin, for being a part of this. Thank you, Councilwoman Natasha Arbor-Madison, Police Chief Manley, Assistant City Manager Chris Shorter, Sheriff Hernandez, District Attorney Margaret Moore, the mayor in his absence. I'm sure he's busy, and my partner in crime, Suki. Thank y'all so much. We will see y'all next time.
All right, everyone. Will Dupree here in the KXAN live studio still. Again, that was the wrap up of a town hall held by Austin Justice Coalition with 6 different leaders here in Austin and Travis County. You heard there Chaz Moore from the Justice Coalition say that included Mayor Steve Adler, City Council Member Natasha Harbor-Madison, Police Chief Brian Manley, District Attorney Margaret Moore, Sheriff Sally Hernandez, and Austin Assistant City Manager Chris Shorter. Before we go, though, and wrap up this particular stream, I appreciate you all sticking around for this long because it's been going about an hour and 45 minutes at this point. But we just got some new numbers in that are unfortunate to share at this time about our particular area here in Central Texas. If you take a look there at that top line, we now know that there are 305 positive confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Travis County, and it's also being reported now that a third person has now died from the virus here in our area. Williamson County and Hayes County also upped their numbers today, sharing that in Williamson there are now 55 confirmed cases and 42 now in Hayes. Again, those are brand new numbers coming into our newsroom within the last hour or so. Top of mind, though, is that we are crossing the 300 threshold here in Travis County, and that another person has unfortunately died from COVID-19. Statewide, I want you to take a look right here. We now have crossed the 4,000 mark in terms of positive COVID-19 cases in Texas. More than 4,200 people have now tested positive for the virus. 69 people are now reportedly dead, and more than 47,000 people have been tested for COVID-19 here in Texas. So the testing capability is going up, but so are the identifications of positive cases and, unfortunately, deaths. Once again, I'm Will Dupree here in the KXAN Live Studio. We do appreciate you all sticking around with us today without these updates. We're trying to put out the most information we can, and thank you for watching this one. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Please stay safe and healthy and abide by these guidelines, because that's only going to keep you in that best of shape as possible moving forward. We'll see you back here later. Have a good one, everybody.